I work with a lot of agencies, a lot of B2B companies. I'm working with a company in agricultural supply. I've worked in jewelry and high-end watches. I've worked in nuts and bolts, like very literally nuts and bolts in manufacturing and ID badges, health and wellness and real estate and development and all across the board, travel, restaurant. The thing is in this particular case, when you're looking at it from a business coaching perspective, I could follow what everybody else says, just niche down into a particular industry for what I do. And in many ways, it could be a good thing because I'd be able to acquire clients a lot easier and faster and so forth. But on the flip side of the coin, what that does is create an echo chamber. Everybody gets the same strategy and everybody's be able to grow. It's very difficult to create those breakthrough leaders. So instead, I focus specifically on working with 7 and 8 figure companies.
Welcome to the New World Podcast, where we delve into the ever-changing and accelerating pace of global change and its impact on our lives. I'm your host, John Paul Flores, broadcasting live from the New World Studio. Today, we're diving into the world of AI and automation. As an enthusiast and expert in lead generation, I will guide you through understanding and leveraging these technologies for your business and for your personal use. And don't forget, AI and automation might be unstoppable forces, but that doesn't mean you are powerless. Tune in to learn how to make them work for you and not the other way around. But first, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the New World Podcast, where we navigate the changing world around us. I'm your host, John Paul Flores, specializing in lead generation and AI automation, here to help you understand how our world is changing and what it means for you. Today, we're honored to have and introduce Charles Gaudet, founder of Predictable Profits and the author of the Predictable Profits Playbook. And by the way, if you try and look up his book, his cover on that book is amazing. It's simple and amazing to understand. With over 2 decades of experience, Charles is a leading expert in business growth and entrepreneurship, renowned for helping entrepreneurs scale their businesses and achieve predictable success in a rapidly changing marketplace. Charles not only advises some of the world's fastest growing companies, but also holds a top spot among business coaches. His insights have been featured in Forbes and Entrepreneur and other publications, showcasing his innovative strategies, and under Charles' guidance, Predictable Profits has enabled numerous entrepreneurs to achieve remarkable milestones, including scaling from under 1 million to 24.1 million in just 3 years, generating an additional 1.17 million in 10 days for another company, and increasing earnings per lead by 540.14% within 15 months. That is amazing. Join us as we delve into a conversation with Charles to explore his proven methods and uncover the secrets to thriving in today's dynamic business environment. Charles, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, it's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
No, I tried to make the intro way shorter, but I wasn't able to do so.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, the intro for that is shortened. So the first version that I had, by the way, is at least 20 to 35% longer.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. That's very kind of you.
And before we delve into the more in-depth questions, I want to get personal. Can you give us a quick intro on who Charles Gaudet is, what your experiences are, and what keeps you busy these days?
Sure. I've been an entrepreneur since age of 4. Never had a traditional quote-unquote real job. After graduating college, I started a business nominated by Ernst & Young as being one of the nation's best seed stage companies. From there, I continued to build and grow different companies. I created my first multi-million-dollar business at the age of 24. And in 2010, somebody offered to pay me to help them grow their business. We've taken many companies, Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies list. You mentioned that one company that we took to 23 million in 3 years. We took another company to 46 million in 6 years. from 950,000 to 46 million. So we've done, some pretty extraordinary things. Just the work that we've done, it's attracted some pretty cool notoriety. International Business Times calls me the go-to business coach for 7- and 8-figure companies. Just a few weeks ago, I was over in the New York Stock Exchange talking about things like the AI revolution. I was on the NASDAQ talking about just small business growth. So we've done some pretty cool things. And in terms of like what keeps me busy these days, we're facing a lot of economic uncertainty right now. The strategies that worked last year are not working as well this year. And so we don't believe that there's a difference between a good market or a bad market. We think that it's really just different markets. So different markets require different strategies. So my focus now is really navigating these different markets and paying attention to what's working and what's not working. So we're faced with a few different things. Number one, we've got the economic uncertainty, which I think everybody is feeling to some extent. But there's multiple variables that are all hitting us at the same time. We've got the economic uncertainty. We've got technological uncertainty with AI. People aren't sure how AI is going to disrupt their business. The only thing that they should be sure of is that it will be disrupting their business. All businesses at all levels, regardless of what you are, including if you're even a massage therapist, AI will be interrupting and disrupting your business. And then there's, other concerns that continue to come up. One of them, just read recently, they're predicting another pandemic coming soon. Who knows if that's right or not? But, that's something else that we have to look at. So we've got a lot of things that are coming to us all at the same time. There's political uncertainty with the elections. There's, macro concerns around wars. I mean, we've got the war in Ukraine. We've got the war between, Israel and Palestine. We've got, there's so many things that are going on right now. What do us as a small businesses, how do we prepare for it? And that's really what keeps me busy right now.
That's amazing. And it's really interesting the way you said that there's not really a good marketer and a bad marketer, just the market changes.
Yeah.
And do you think a great marketer is someone who is very fast to adapt?
Oh, yes, actually. And while I do think that, one of my mentors back in 2005 goes by the name of Marshall Thurber. Marshall actually was Tony Robbins' mentor. He mentored a gentleman who's now the Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Actually, the guy who wrote the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. Marshall Thurber was actually one of the rich dads that was profiled, and the other one, Keith Cunningham, both mentors of mine. The interesting thing, Marshall had said that he can very predictably determine which entrepreneurs are going to be successful by how quickly they are willing to adapt to existing environments. So adaptation is key. I believe it was Dr. W. Edwards Deming that says, you don't have to evolve. Survival's not necessary, or survival's not mandatory, right? So you don't have to evolve. Survival's not mandatory. So even he was saying in a sort of a backhanded way, look, everybody has to evolve. But now if you look at the business owners today, what do you notice? You notice that rather than evolving, they are cutting back their marketing. They're laying off employees. They're going into the corner, sucking their thumbs, and they're just praying that things are going to hope change and some miraculously turn around. They're doing the same things, just with less results, and they're stressed instead of adapting.
I see a lot of companies, instead of trying to evolve, most of them falls into the opposite ends of the spectrum, especially in the AI revolution. Some of them, instead of trying to adapt AI into their business, they just lay off employees because they're scared. And some of them, instead of hiring more employees, they try to replace almost all of the tools that they're using with AI, and that leads to most of them not knowing what to do next because they're not familiar with it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. AI is fascinating, right? Because it's misunderstood. For most people, They think AI is a simple, almost like a content tool, where they could just turn around and say, write me an article on such and such. It's very like rudimentary. Um, Other people say, oh yeah, I use AI, and they use it in place of Google. Hey, they ask it a question and then they get a response. And they feel that that's basically the point of AI. That's not even scratching the surface in the slightest bit. If AI is your most intelligent employee. And when you look at AI in that way, and you say, okay, we can use AI for marketing. We can, and just, you can use AI for outbound. You can use AI for inbound. You can use AI for a whole bunch of different strategies. You can use AI for HR. You can use AI for admin. You can use And so does it mean it's replacing employees? Well, to some extent, maybe, but I don't actually like to look at it that way. Instead, I'll go ahead and I'll work with a team and I'll say, let's pick someone. And let's say it's a closer. Let's say it's their account executive. So now let's go to AI and let's ask AI as an account executive for Acme Corporation or whatever one it is. What are the best ways to use this tool, right? And so it'll give us some of the best practices. Then you might want to go back and say, how will AI make my role irrelevant by the year 2028? And then it'll say how AI is going to completely disrupt and make it irrelevant. Then go ahead and AI will teach you how to compete against itself. So say, okay, now what skills and abilities do I have to enhance in order to remain relevant? And so we'll go ahead and do this. And I mean, I can go on and on and on because it's really a fascinating conversation. But if you just look at B2B sales in general, B2B sales, what people aren't prepared for is if you just spend a little bit of time doing the research, you'll find that B2B sales is moving from a traditional sales role to eventually it's going to be moving to a customer service type of role. Because consumers have become far more educated, AI is going to be assisting in a lot of decision-making processes. People are less willing to get on the phone. And so that's trending in that direction over the course of many years. If my naysayers will say, I don't believe that's true. But when we look at some of the companies that tend to lead, and you say Tesla, for example, now you can turn around and you can buy a $120,000 Tesla using your mobile app. You don't talk to anybody until you go ahead and until after you've purchased. You've got some people who really, they were so strong on saying, no, we need to talk to people. A good example of this, I saw him the other day on stage, Will Guidara, I think it's 11 Medicine Ave, #1 restaurant in the world. I used to say, well, people, they want this white glove, #1 restaurant, but such, bouginess as they have, they got to be able to talk to people. Well, even that's evolved. No, they want to book online. And then only after they book online are they willing to talk to somebody. So there's so many things that are changing and it's moving so fast. If you're not evolving to the changing environment, you're going to be stuck in the mud just as much as the other people were who decided the internet is only a fad and I don't have to get a web page.
I see this phenomenon with myself. It's when I see a software that I like to try out. And the only thing in their page is a schedule demo. Now I instantly go out of that page. I don't want to talk to anybody.
Yeah, I get it. Totally get it.
And let's be practical. The best of their industry never gets replaced. But most of the average ones do get replaced, and I think that's the main part that people are scared of.
You're right. Because here's the deal. If I can learn it in a book or take a course and learn it, and that's the only context that you're able to bring, it's just what's taught in a book, then you will be replaced. You absolutely, no questions asked, you'll be replaced. And that's why most people, we're going to see this big divide. We're going to see some people that are going to lead and do really, really well, and other people who are going to fall. And there's going to be this big divide. The people who are going to fall are going to be the ones that have not built a unique context into their life. When I talk about a unique context, let's look at my life, business coaching. Most business coaches will ultimately be replaced. I get it. I'd like to think that I'd be one of those that won't be replaced. Perfect example, a client brought to me this marketing strategy that they built over AI. I said, what do you think? I said, it's brilliant if this was your business. And he said, what do you mean? You've misclassified your super consumer. He said, I don't understand. And I said, you see, this entire prompt and everything that you built following this prompt was predicated on a certain executive, but you're missing one key variable. Add the word busy in front of that executive, because you are actually targeting busy executives, and that changes the whole thing. And so we added the word busy, and the marketing strategy changed completely, unrecognizable from its original version. Oh my God, how did you know that? And I said, because I've been doing this for, 14 years. In its context. See, when you're working with AI, you wouldn't blame the canvas for a bad painting. You wouldn't blame the paintbrush for a bad painting. You blame the painter. AI, you are the one who is adding the input into AI. And so whatever the output is a reflection of the quality of your input. And so for you to create great input, you need to be able to understand, what has to happen, like what makes good input. It's that, that context that's going to be critically important. So, I think that's one of the things that people don't understand. I have a conversation with my son. I have 3 kids, and my son's my oldest. He's looking in what am I going to do with my life and blah, blah, blah. I say, hey, Branson, you don't need to know the answers anymore. Let's get rid of that thought in your head. You don't need to know the answers. What are you talking about, Dad? You don't need to know the answers. What you need to know are the questions to be able to ask. Questions are more important than answers right now, because all the answers are out there. How are you going to know a question to ask if you don't have the context to know the right questions?
It's fantastic. Yeah. And especially with AI, they don't have context at all. And I think the part of the human who can add context to a prompt or to a conversation with AI that they're using with their business is going to be the one who has more experience and going to get the better results, as you said, with the prompt.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. For sure. That's it. That's the cool thing. We all have the same tool. Like, for the most part, like, we all have access to AI. We all have access to the most intelligent employee that we could have in our business. So what is the difference in the playing field? It's going to be the input that we're giving it.
Yeah. And the great thing about AI is it's not like the machines that were invented in the Industrial Revolution, where only a big company can afford them. You can be someone with an internet connection and you can access most of the AI tools for free, which basically levels the playing field in most cases.
You're right. You're absolutely correct. And unlike the internet era, when the internet first came out, it required people to be a little bit more technologically advanced, and it required people to spend thousands of dollars on a website. And most people didn't even know what to ask for when it came to a website, or how the website. Then, once you build it, people have to then find the website. It's so complex. But the AI, you log into a tool and you automatically have access. Now it's just about you asking the right questions. So I've been using AI since January 2023, and now I've spoken about AI multiple times, and people have this false impression that I'm some sort of like tech geek or whatnot. That and it's like, no, you know what the thing is I'm far from a tech geek. Not at all. But when you use something every day, you get better at it, and you get better at it, and you get better at it. And it's like, all you have to do is you just have to start using it. And you have to use it with intentionality. If you don't like the output, ask yourself different questions. What needs to happen in order for me to get the output that I need. And then eventually you'll get a better output. But sometimes it's a matter of, okay, maybe instead of asking how, to take a page off of Dean Jackson's notebook, Dean talks about this idea of who, not how. So maybe instead of how do I do it, maybe who could show me how to get this answer?
Hmm.
And then we got to look for a who. But again, it's like, but even to do that, we're not looking, somebody else has the answers. We just need to know the questions to ask.
That's fantastic. And I think AI is an amplifier at the end of the day.
Yes.
If you're lazy, you will just complain and wait till you get replaced. Or if you try to use if you try to write a prompt, you'll be lazy and just say write me this thing and make it this long. It's lazy. And the people who are way smarter and are willing to do more work gets to ask better questions and get better outputs, as you said.
Yep, you're absolutely correct, for sure. That's why there's
And
going to be this big
yeah,
divide. I mean, you look at AI. I told you that the quality of the output is going to be largely related to the input, but it also has to do with like the questions. And we talked about that. You need to know the questions. So I've gone one step further. Either if I'm using a different tool, then I will finish my prompt often with, now ask me 3 more questions that I haven't thought to ask you yet, right? Or in ChatGPT, in my custom instructions, I have it set up so that at the end of every output, follow up with 3 more questions. Because it's like, oh, those questions, either they're great, and I'm like, okay, let's continue with this thought process, or it will stimulate another question that is unrelated to the 3 it gave me, but I know what it's going for, and I'm like, okay, now let's go ahead and let's answer this. When you look at the threads that I'll type into AI, those threads will go on and on and on and on and on. Because to really create that competitive advantage, you have to go from level 1 thinking to level 2 thinking, and then all the way down to level 3 thinking. You want to create a competitive advantage in AI, then you're going to do that by asking it the questions that nobody else thinks to ask it.
Yeah. And I just noticed that by the way you said, it's just like having an employee. Let's say you're the CEO of a company. If you just say to somebody, hey, do this thing, and you don't prompt them to ask more questions for that, whatever they need to do, they tend to make things that are not on your quality,
Right.
things that you don't like. And if you prompt them, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's actually talk on what I want to achieve with this goal. And I think they're going to be far better.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely correct.
And I noticed in one of your videos, you talked about business growth plateau. Can you let us know what that means?
Well, any type of plateau, it's stagnation. It means that they're not growing, they're not really shrinking. They're just sort of like, they're just existing, right? And more times than not, it's usually companies that they built their business predominantly from word of mouth and referrals. And as a result, things just kind of get stuck. They're waiting for the phone to ring. And they usually have a great product and service because they are getting word of mouth and referrals, but they're just not getting enough of it. And so they tend to plateau. To break through that plateau, they need to go ahead and they need to build out more scalable marketing and sales systems, whether they're going to leverage outbound, which, just for the record, outbound is not a strategy in and of itself. Outbound is a category. There are multiple different strategies inside of outbound, just like inbound. Inbound is a category, and there are multiple different strategies inside of inbound. So, which of those strategies are going to be applicable to you? And that's how you're going to go ahead and break those plateaus. Now, when we look at, creating marketable, scalable marketing and sales strategies, the goal, and I talk about this in the Predictable Profits Playbook, the goal is to create 1 new spoke per quarter. So, let's say over the course of this year, we'd build 1 new spoke per quarter. by the end of the year, that's 4 new ways in which we are bringing in leads and sales. 4 new ways. Now, when you're going beyond word of mouth and then all of a sudden you have 4 new ways, you're going to see a nice little surge in revenue and profits. By the end of 2 years, now you've got 8. Now, that's phenomenal. Now you're really kind of cruising. So, and then it goes on beyond that. But we know that actions plus resources equal goal, right? So you want to get a goal, it's actions plus resources. When you're a small business, say your startup, 6 figures, you have very limited resources. So it's all actions. You're doing everything yourself. So even just getting 1 new profit center a quarter is tough. Then as you make more money and your wallet gets thicker, now you have more resources. So now you can invest in people. And the result of that is now you might have 2 profit centers or 2 spokes in the wheel every quarter instead of 1. And then as you get bigger and bigger and bigger, you got more resources and you can go ahead and deploy multiple. So you have so many different ways to generate leads and profits. If one thing changes, SEO algorithm change, no big deal because we're making our money somewhere else. You just don't want to have any more than like 20%, general rule of thumb, any more than 20% of the total revenue of your business, like in one particular spoke, because that creates a vulnerability. Everything at any given point in time eventually will disappear or have a massive disruption. And I've been talking about this since 2010. And one of the more common ways, especially in B2B, where people were making money were events. And they go, well, I mean, come on now. It's not like that's ever going to change. And I'm like, well, I don't know. You know, back in the day, I'm like, you might be right. I mean, you're probably right. But what I noticed throughout history is that something always changes and is disruptive. So we want to have these multiple spokes. Nobody could have forecasted 2020, but in 2020, events no longer happened. And all these businesses that were built on events, they struggled. Email, especially outbound, is always changing. Algorithms change and then they become less effective. SEO, algorithms change to become less effective. Now we have Gen AI. Most people are investing so much money into traditional SEO, they don't realize that one day the Gen AI engines are going to turn on and their websites are not going to get the same traction they had before because their websites aren't optimized for the Gen AI. They're optimized for traditional SEO. That's all changing now. And I could keep going on and on and on, but you're seeing the theme is all about evolution and adapting.
That's amazing. And what is the importance of a company having a predictable profits?
Well, so there's this is old saying. Well, actually, I was going to give you an old saying, but it tends to be a little bit crass. They keep it more PG. The whole turtle and a hare type of philosophy, right? You've got the rabbit that takes off super fast, eventually gets tired, and the turtle wins a race. People always think about wanting to grow the company fast, and their focus is grow fast, grow fast, grow fast. Well, when you look at the data, the Kauffman Foundation did a study, and they found that 66% of companies in the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies list, within 5 to 8 years of first getting listed, will shrink in size, go out of business, or be disadvantageously sold, because the whole premise is all about growing fast, growing fast, growing fast. But then the turtle looks at, how do I create that sustainable pace to be able to grow consistently, month after month after month, and so forth. And that's how they won the race. So you can create predictability by basically saying, how do I create that sustainable growth? It does not mean, unlike the turtle and the hare scenario, it does not mean that you won't be able to grow fast. As I shared with you, I took a company from 950,000 to 46 million in 6 years. That's super fast. But it's sustainable because while that was going on, the systems and the processes and everything were being built to create that growth and keep the company growing. So it's about sustainable growth. Growth at all costs is a detriment. You can grow a company fast. The part is easy, but keeping it growing is the hard part.
especially because that's where the boring parts comes in. And I don't think a lot of
Right.
entrepreneurs who goes into the game expecting that, yeah, this would be amazing, this would be the best experience of my life, this would be interesting. No, it's boring.
You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct.
And do you think people are getting less trustworthy due to the recent AI innovation that we're seeing?
I think people are inherently lacking trust all over the place. They don't trust the president. They don't trust the Congress. They don't trust the pharmaceutical industries or any of the other big business. They don't trust regular business to do what's right. They don't trust the news. They don't trust social media. That
Yeah.
it's like, what do people trust now? We're coming to a place of distrust. And so, you bring up a really good point on trust and privacy and
Yeah.
so much across the board. Trust is a competitive advantage, and the way that you build trust is do what you say you're going to do and continue to do that. You build trust by being transparent. When something goes wrong, own up to it. Hey, you know what?
Yeah.
We messed up. Here's how we plan on making it right. We don't walk on water. We make mistakes. We're only human. But we have to be able to own up to it, be willing to make things right. And that's how we build trust over time.
That's fantastic. Do you see that you having a podcast, which is in its 230th episode, which is amazing, actually makes your potential clients trust you easier?
So familiarity creates trust as well, right? So the more familiar you are to somebody, the more likely they are to trust you.
Yeah.
And so by listening to my podcasts over and over and over again, they hear my voice, they hear the message. Generally speaking, they get an idea of how sincere I am, or
Yeah.
maybe they don't think I am, who knows, but they have an idea of whether they think I'm sincere or not. And then by the time they get on the phone with me, usually it's already like we have some rapport.
Yeah.
And so they feel like there's a situation not too long ago where somebody met me on the street and they're like, oh my God, and they're treating me like we're long lost friends. And I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, how do I not remember who this person was? Come to find out they're just a podcast listener, but they've known me. So they're talking to me like long lost friend because they know me. And as a result, there was already this, they felt like they could trust me.
That's fantastic. And I see that on most of your podcasts, you're wearing the same shirt, or at least have your brand in there. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
And what industries do you like working best? Do you only primarily help one industry, or do you also try to help various industries across different fields?
So I've worked with industries. I mean, I work with a lot of agencies, a lot of B2B companies. I'm working with a company in agricultural supply. I've worked in jewelry and high-end watches. I've worked in nuts and bolts, like very literally nuts and bolts in manufacturing and ID badges, and health and wellness and real estate and development and all across the board, travel, restaurants.
Okay.
The thing is in this particular case, when you're looking at it from a business coaching perspective, I could follow what everybody else says and just niche down into a particular industry for what I do. And in many ways, it could be a good thing because I'd be able to acquire clients a lot easier and faster and so forth. But on the flip side of the coin, what that does is create an echo chamber. Everybody gets the same strategy and everybody's be able to grow. It's very difficult to create those breakthrough leaders. So instead, I focus specifically on working with 7 and 8 figure companies. Now, it's very difficult for somebody to step into my shoes. Because when you start working with 7 and 8 figure companies, it actually doesn't matter how much I charge. Like, that's usually secondary to them. Like, of course, money is important, but actually it doesn't matter. The most important thing to them is they are taking an hour out of their day to meet with me. Their time is so valuable that it's now I have to provide in 1 hour a more valuable use of their time than what they would be spending doing something else. So that right there becomes the most difficult part of my job. When I'm talking, I say 7 and 8 figure CEOs, but it's not uncommon for a $500 million CEO to reach out to me and have a conversation with me. And now they're doing $500 million a year, and I have to meet with them in an hour, provide them with a piece of advice that is so valuable to them that it's more valuable than any other hour they could have spent in that moment. You can do that when you can get fresh perspectives that you can take from other industries and other situations and other people.
Do you think that's the best advantage that you have from other coaches that tries to niche down, is that you see other innovations in different industries that you then can identify and bring back to another industry that you're helping?
I think that's a huge advantage. I also think the advantage is that we focus in on 7 and 8 figure companies. And, John Paul, if I ask you, how many other business coaches do you know that focus on 7, 8 figure companies? If you're like most people, you really can't think of any, or many for that matter, because there's really not a lot. That's because it takes a totally different skill set.
Yeah.
To do that. And it's hard. It's, if I chose the easy route, and it's hard in its own way, but, smaller companies would be a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So you can always bring something new. But it's hard when you start working with these big ones.
Yeah, because the smaller companies, I think your main goal would be trying to systemizing their processes and making them scalable.
Yeah.
But the bigger companies, you don't need to make their systems systemized because they already have it. You need to optimize it and look beyond what they just have in the surface.
You are absolutely correct. And I don't mean to, by any stretch of the means, I don't mean to marginalize anybody that might be working with, 5, 6, even those 7-figure companies. I mean, if you provide results, like, you're awesome. You're killer.
Yeah.
You're awesome. You're doing great. And frankly, if I'm to be fully transparent, it's not where my skill sets are. My skill set isn't on 6, 7-figure businesses. So it's like my strength is with larger companies. So it's like where you go, where your strengths are. It's like you put me on a basketball court and, I could have Michael Jordan teach me how to dunk a ball every single day for the next 5 years. I am never going to dunk a ball. I'm just never going to do it. I'm not built like that to dunk a ball. And same thing. So now you put me in the coaching space. It's like, what I'm built for, what I'm really good at is these 7 and 8 figure companies. So anything outside of that parameter, I'm not as good at. So I stay where I'm good. I can dunk a ball at 7 and 8 figure companies. I can't do it outside of that.
That's fascinating and a great example. And, before you choose to work with a company, do you actually try to prioritize understanding their culture to try and see if your strategies would work? Because sometimes their culture might be a big barrier on what they're willing to change.
Yeah, that's a good point. We look at them as if we were going to invest in them, even though we're not technically investing in these businesses. We look at them as if we're investing in them, because we live in a small world, and if we don't deliver results, then word gets out, right? So we interview these clients to see what is the potential and can we help them. We don't just look at the business itself, because that part is critical. Can we do anything and add value to the business? We also want to look at the entrepreneur. If you're talking to somebody on the phone and right off the bat, you give them some advice and they come back with, yeah, but, or yeah, but. It's like, well, they've already demonstrated that they're not coachable. And so it probably doesn't make sense for us to work together. I mean, half the people that we talk with, we just will disqualify. It just, maybe it's just not a good fit. Or it's always because it's, not a good fit. And so, we'll refer them to somebody else that might be a better fit for them. But, it's just, it is what it is. I'd love to be able to support and help everybody, but sometimes you can't, right?
Sometimes you become good enough in what you do that you actually need to say no to the bad opportunities.
Yeah, well, and I think that's part of trust building that we talked about earlier. Like, we're not going to pretend to be somebody that we're not. And we've had many people come to us and be like, look, where I could use the most help is on fundraising. Like, I've done it before, but I'm not the expert in fundraising. So I'm probably not going to be the best fit for you, or I need, support when it comes to inventory management. It's like, what? I understand it, but I'm not the expert. Or I want help with Amazon marketing. I can help you to expand beyond Amazon. I'm not the expert on Amazon. So I'm probably going to recommend somebody else for you on that one. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that's fascinating. And what are the steps that a company needs to take for them to actually be scalable? Because I know a lot of businesses might be profitable and they're growing day by day, but most of them are not scalable.
Yeah. So there was a little bit of a glitch. So repeat that one more time. I just want to make sure I understood that.
Yeah, sure. So some companies, maybe they're growing a bit and maybe they're growing a lot, but that's just on the start. What makes a company actually scalable? What are the steps that they need to ensure?
If you look at it, it's almost like, can they expand? Right? So scalable is, can they expand? And so when we look at what does it take to expand, it's the systems and the processes, right? So systems and processes, can they expand? But then the other part of it is, do they have a lever that they can pull and push? So let's say I'm running paid ads and I'm bringing in 100 leads per day. If I want to increase my lead flow by 25%, can I increase my budget by 25%? That creates a lot more scalability. So it's just like, if I can put $1 in and get some out, then, that's a lever to pull. So the systems, processes, and the levers.
That's amazing. And how do you see, let's go to the AI part again, because I think it's one of the biggest factor that many businesses will try to integrate in their processes. What advice would you give to companies looking to integrate these AIs in their companies?
I think the most important thing is to start. So, just to start small. The next important thing is that we made it a requirement of employment that for you to work with us, you have to find a way to integrate AI into your role. And we tell the same thing to our clients. For our clients, we say, make AI a condition of employment and allow them to spend a little bit of time every morning or every afternoon, whatever it is, using AI, and give them the certain prompts. As an executive assistant for XYZ company, what are some ways in which I can use AI to support me in my role? And figure out ways to use more AI in that role. We did this with a manufacturing company. Everybody in the manufacturing company began using AI. And he said after 2 weeks that the majority of the people were able to, on average, delegate 10% of their lowest value activities to AI. And they replaced that time with a higher value activity. So the return on all the employees' time went way up, and their profitability as a company, they already had a measurable difference in profitability just within that short time period.
That's great. And especially, I think that's important since I think most of the things a person will do in the future is just being a prompt engineer for that specific task or job.
Sure.
And there's nothing bad about that. I mean, if you're a marketer, you use email, you use Gmail. That's a tool.
Yeah.
And that replaces the people that needs to get the mail from your office and take it to another place. And that's
Sure.
just basically the same thing. Innovation.
Sure.
Fantastic innovation. And since we're nearing the end, I know that by now you probably have a good eye to see which entrepreneurs you think will be successful and which are not. How can you determine if a person would most likely be successful or not?
That's a really good question. My gut response is, are they curious? And I just had this interaction with somebody this morning where rather than being curious why something was done, instead they automatically interjected their opinion.
Yeah.
And whether this is business or in life, the curious one will get the advantage because they're going to look at it and say, let me first understand it from this perspective. And then I'll suspend my judgment until I look at it from this perspective. And then I'll have an educated decision. So I attended the U.S. Army War College as a civilian. And they have to make the most important decisions in the world. Because one wrong decision could cost people millions or could cost millions of lives. And so when you look at how the important decisions are made, they have to look at it from both perspectives. Yeah. What if I did this, or what if I did that? And they look at both sides. Or if you look at, a terrorist, what is their perspective, and why do they feel that they're right? What is the other opposing's perspective, and why do they think that they're right? So that you can come to a better resolution. And same thing when it comes to people. If they're willing to be open-minded and curious, to look at the different perspectives, why is it? Why does this work? What's working? What's not working? What's unexpected? Ask different questions, better answers, and that would be my answer.
That's fantastic. And last question is, can you recommend any books that you've read in your life that you think dramatically changed the way you think right now?
The number one book would be Richard Branson's autobiography, which is Losing My Virginity. It actually inspired my life so much that I named my son Branson. Another really great book for 7, 8-figure CEOs is by a guy named Doug Tatum. And he wrote a book, why can't I think of it? No Man's Land. There it is. No Man's Land. That's a great book. I also like Keith Cunningham's book, The Road Less Stupid. That's another good book.
That's fantastic. And that brings us to the end of the amazing episode with Charles. And that's amazing since you actually have experience from different industries and also on a much higher level because you actually help 7 to 8 figure businesses. And thank you for joining the New World podcast. Before we wrap up, do you have other thoughts or final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I just want to say, the most important thing is just to remain consistent and persistent. And if you do consistent, persistent, imperfect action over and over and over again, that will trump any strategy or anything else for that matter. It's just being willing to just stay in the game, lean in, adapt, evolve, ask better questions, and remain curious.
That's fantastic. Basically, be willing to fail and try again.
You got it.
And where can our listeners find you?
So predictableprofits.com is where they can find me on socials at Charles Gaudet. They can also, if anything resonated with them and they want to check out the book, The Predictable Profits Playbook, that's great. Or my podcast, the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. I'd welcome our listeners there.
I'm going to have all those resources up here. And again, thank you for joining us. And I know you have a lot of better things to do. and thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
That's all for today's episode of the New World Podcast. We have explored some fascinating topics with our amazing guests, shedding light on the upcoming New World. If you enjoyed today's episode and today's discussion and want to stay updated the future episodes, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to the podcast. And if you found value on what we have discussed, please consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Remember, if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, or if you are interested in being a guest in the future, please feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn or email me at john.paul@aicinix.com and add New World Podcast, all capital, in the subject line so I can see it. I always love hearing from our listeners. And don't forget to check out our amazing guests. You can find more information about them by the contact details we provided earlier. Again, thank you for tuning in on the New World Podcast. I know your time is very important and I try to always make the next episode better than the last. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, keep innovating. This is John Paul Flores signing off from the New World Podcast.